Welcome to Directed Numbers Review. This video is meant to just kind of review every topic that we've been talking about in this unit to prepare you for our final unit assessment. So when I'm talking about this, I'm going to give you some basically abbreviated rules. I'm not going to go into the why a lot, and I'm going to give you a bunch of practice. So it's really required that you stop this video and practice. If you don't stop this video and practice, I'm wasting my time. Okay, so the first thing that we talked about this unit, or one of the first things, would be adding integers. So I'm just going to show you the basic rule, and then you're going to try some. There's basically two options you could have that are new to you. Obviously, you know how to add two positive numbers, but what if you're adding two negative numbers, for instance? So let's say we have negative 24 plus negative 51. So they're both negative. Okay. The other option you could have, I'll write it over here, is if only one is negative and the other one is regular old positive. So those are the only two options you could have with adding. So let's write down the rules for doing this. Okay. So I'm going to call this over here same sign because they're both negative. So if the things you're adding have the same sign, do you remember what to do? I hope you said that you actually add them, ignoring the sign at first. Just add them together and keep their sign. Keep the sign. Okay? So the sign is negative. I'm going to keep that negative sign, and then I just add them. So what is that then? 75. So my final answer is negative 75. Well, what if they have not the same sign, but what if they have different signs? So over here we have different signs, right? One is negative, one is positive. So how could we abbreviate the rule for that? Okay, I hope you said that you subtract. You have to find the difference between these two numbers. So you always take the bigger absolute value and subtract off the smaller absolute value. So in this case, it would be 51 minus 24. So we have to subtract, find the difference of those. Okay, so let's do that quick. What is 51 minus 24? Okay, 27. Now I want to figure out if this is positive or negative for sure. And then I remember my rule that I keep the sign of the bigger number, the bigger absolute value to be specific. So which has a bigger absolute value, negative 24 or 51? Hope you said 51. So since 51 is positive, my answer is positive. So I wrote bigger sign. I'm trying to really abbreviate this to simplify things in your head. I hope this still makes sense to you. What I mean by bigger sign is keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. Okay? So very simplified rules here. Maybe you even need an additional way to remember this in your head. So sometimes I like to come up with acronyms. Let me see if I can do that here. Same sign, add, and then keep the sign. So we could call this SAC. When you're adding, you do SAC. Same sign, add them, keep the sign. And then this one would be, I guess, different signs. Then you're going to subtract and keep the bigger sign, DSB. That's not a good one. How about DBS, like the bank? Okay, so they're different signs. You're going to keep the bigger sign and subtract them, find the difference. Okay, hope that kind of makes sense. All right, let's talk about then the situation when we're subtracting, which is really not much different. Okay. You still have two options for subtracting. You could have, it doesn't matter if the first number is negative or positive, it's negative in this case. You could subtract a positive number, okay? Or you could subtract a negative number. So subtracting a positive 31 or subtracting a negative 31. All right, so my rule is you're never going to do subtraction. You're never actually going to do subtraction. You're going to do the addition form of subtraction. So you always are going to turn these into addition. So I'm going to write must turn into addition. And you just have to trust me that this way of thinking is going to help you a lot in the future. So this is required for showing your work on the test. Okay? So in order to turn it into addition, there's a cute little rule to follow called KCC. That means keep, change. Okay, so if I have negative 28 minus 31, okay, I want to turn that into addition. I'm going to keep the first number. Okay, so that's negative 28. Keep it. Don't do anything different. Change the sign. Subtraction gets changed to addition. Change the second number. Right now it's a positive 31. I have to change it to a negative 31. Okay? So now I have, instead of negative 28 minus 31, it's negative 28 plus negative 31. And now I can follow my rules from above. Let's see. Same sign, sack. Same sign, addition, keep the sign. So I add them together, right? And keep the sign, negative 59. All right, 28 minus negative 31. I'm going to follow the same rules. No different rules. It's still KCC. Keep, change, change. Keep the first number. Change the sign. Change the second number. It's negative 31, so now it'll be positive 31. Okay, so now I'm finding the difference. I'm following DBS. Different signs. Keep the bigger sign. Subtract them. So if I subtract these, I just get 3, and it's going to be a positive 3 since 31 is the bigger number. Ta-da! Woohoo! Okay, so now I have some practice for you. Here it is. Okay, so there are, for numbers 21 through 30, I would like you to pause now and do this. Let me try to zoom in so maybe it's a little bit better and you can see what's going on. Okay, so numbers 21 through 30. Pause this video, please, and try each of these, and then I'll show you the answers. All right, hopefully you're coming back and you've done these problems. So now you can check your answers with the answer key right here. All right, so 21 is 57, 22 is 58. It's hard to see 30. I'll zoom out a little bit. So you can check your answers here. All right, zoom out. There we go. All right, pause and check your answers as needed. Okay, wonderful. I hope that's making more sense to you. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about now is multiplying and dividing. In my opinion, multiplying and dividing is much more straightforward. Multiply, divide. I hope you are writing this down. This is good review. Okay, so you have two options when you multiply or divide. Both the numbers could be negative. Okay, so for instance, negative 15 times negative 3. Okay, so they could both be negative. Or if you're dividing, okay, you could have, I'll just keep the same ones, negative 15 divided by negative 3. So those are your two options. They're both negative. Your other option is one of each. One negative, one positive. So I'll pick different numbers for fun. It could be 18 times negative 2, or it could be 18 divided by negative 2. So they could either both be negative, or just one could be negative. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one. I can't emphasize that enough. It doesn't matter which one. Okay. I'm assuming assuming you know when they're both positive what the answer is. So I don't have that option here. Okay. Let's start with one of each actually over here on the right. Okay. Once you throw in a negative sign, you're saying that you want 18 quantities of negative 2. So your answer is going to be negative. So that's like saying a negative times a positive equals a negative. Doesn't matter if the negative is first or second. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to you. If both the numbers are positive, obviously your answer is positive. But if you make one of them negative, that changes things. It should be obvious that that changes things. So if one's negative, your answer is negative. Let me say that again. If one is negative, your answer is negative. Cool. Well, what about if they're both negative? So that would be a negative times a negative. So if they're both negative, I went through y in another video, but I want you to just kind of think of it like if they're both negative, the other negative cancels out the other negative. Maybe you could think of it like this. The other negative cancels out the other negative, and your answer is positive. So a negative times a negative is a positive. Now, to try to memorize this, I would suggest you do some chanting. Okay? So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a positive is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative. And once you say these rules enough times, they will stick in your brain. There's also lots of little YouTube videos about negative times negatives and that type of thing. Okay? The same is true with division. Okay? So a negative divided by a negative gives you a positive. And a negative divided by a positive, doesn't matter which is first, it could be positive divided by negative, gives you a negative. So these rules are the same. That's why I think multiply divide is quite a bit easier. Now, your math won't change. You always just multiply the numbers that are there. So in this case, 15 times 3 is what I would multiply, and I would get 45. Should my answer be negative or positive? I hope you said positive. All right, there we go. I'm done. Okay. In this case, I'm dividing 15 divided by 3. Okay, what is 15 divided by 3? 5. Okay, should my answer be negative or positive? Hope you said positive. I'm all done there. All right, now with only one being negative, my answer will be negative. I'll have a negative 9 here. Oh, sorry, this is multiplication, not a negative 9. This will be a negative 36. Apologies. This one is division. I'll have a negative 9. Okay. I also really briefly want to remind you of the different ways to write things, okay? So I can write negative 15 times negative 3, okay? That's the same thing as negative 15 dot negative 3, right? That means multiplication too. And I can also just write it with the parentheses, negative 15 times negative 3 with just the parentheses. Just a reminder that all those mean multiplication. Same thing with division. I can do 15 over 3 like this. Okay, or I can do negative 15 divided by negative 3. Okay, I do want to alert you to something interesting though. When I take 18 divided by negative 2, it doesn't matter where I put the negative sign. I hope that makes sense to you. You already know it doesn't matter what order you put it in, the answer is negative. So it doesn't matter if negative 2 is negative or 18 is negative, my answer will be negative. So sometimes they write it out in front like this. Negative 18 over 2. Okay? They're saying the negative goes on one of these numbers. It doesn't really matter because my result is negative. So you could kind of ignore that, do your division, and then put the negative sign back on if you'd like. But just sometimes they write it out in front. So that's just, it doesn't mean they're both negative. It means just one of them is negative for your understanding in 6th grade. Okay, and so that can also be written as 18 divided by negative 2. Okay, so here's some practice. Okay, 1 through 12. I would like you to pause here and give these a try. I'll zoom in a little bit. Ta-da. Pause here, give those a try, write down your answers. All right, if you're just coming back, here's the answer key to that. Give that a go. All right, so now we're going to move into order of operations.